Well, hello, sixth graders again. This is Miss Jen. Y'all know in class we have been starting to go over and study and practice how we divide fractions. This builds upon the skills that we've learned in the last week or so on multiplying fractions. And the reason why this is such an important skill to learn is we're going to be using fractions in lots of different ways throughout the rest of the year. Dividing fractions is different than multiplying fractions because, as you know, I've told you over and over again, the first thing I want you to think of when you see that fraction bar, I want you to think the word divide. Well, decades ago, mathematicians conferred and they came together and they said, we've got to figure out a universal way to make dividing fractions easier because it can get quite convoluted. And they determined that if they took a division problem with fractions and they did the opposite operation, which we know the opposite operation of division is multiplication. If we do the opposite operation and multiply the original fraction times its reciprocal, then we'll get the same answer. And mathematicians can always, decided that process, these steps that we can take to convert a division problem to a multiplication problem is always easier. And so that's what we've been learning and studying in class. These are the notes that I handed out to you in class that we've actually added a little bit to. But for those of you who have been absent or who are struggling a little bit, or for you parents who want to be able to help your kids more at home, which I absolutely love that you do, we're going to show a couple different problems as to how you put this process into work. The first thing that I want to bring to your attention is this statement right here. We only use these steps, these key words to jog your memory with division problems of fractions. We don't do it with any other operation, only division. So if you're doing fractions and you see a multiplication sign or addition sign or subtraction sign, no, skip right over this. You're not going to do these steps. You only do it with division. And what I want you to remember before anything else, before we do any math, the first thing that we have to do when dividing fractions is we actually have to convert that division problem to be a brand spanking new multiplication problem. And these are the tips and the clue words that I want you to remember. Keep, change, flip. And what this means is keep refers to keeping the very first fraction the same. That's the fraction that you're starting off with. That actually, in a division problem, I guess you could consider it your dividend. That's what would go inside the house. That's what you start off with. Keep that first fraction the same. After you write down that first fraction, you actually change the sign that originally was division into being a multiplication sign. Lastly, you take the second fraction in the problem and you actually flip it. You flip the numerator and denominator. And I just did something crazy with my hand, and so you probably saw it in the video. But for you parents and kiddos who are using this for tutorials, in class, you will see me do this symbol to show you to flip the numerator and denominators. That's the reason why I use the keywords keep, change, flip. Because you keep the first fraction the same, then you change the sign to multiplication, and then you flip the second fraction to its reciprocal. Once you do that, those three things, keep, change, flip, you have now created a brand spanking new problem. It's no longer a division problem. It's a multiplication problem. And so you solve it using the two different methods that we've learned before. And then the last thing you have to do is this scary word, simplify. I know y'all don't like it, but you've learned now how to reduce fractions to their simplest terms, and I always want you to do that. Okay, so enough talking. Let's put this to practice. If we have, I'm going to put this right here so we can see it better. If we have a problem like 8/10 divided by 2/5, that is our original problem. This is our division problem. That is not what we want to do. We want to use the keep, change, flip trick to convert it to be multiplication. So let's do that. Keep the first fraction the same. Rewrite the problem. That would be 8/10. Then we're going to change the sign to multiplication and bring it down. Okay, now that we have changed the sign from division to multiplication, the third step is to flip the second fraction to its reciprocal. And that means we're going to flip where the 2 is down to the bottom, and we're going to change where the 5 is and flip it back up to the top. That's how we find a reciprocal, so it's going to be 5/2. From there, you're going to see in the notes, you solve it like a multiplication problem. The first thing that I would do here, using our second method, is to see what can I simplify ahead of time. And if I look, I have a 5 and a 10. 5 goes into both of those numbers, so I'm going to divide both of them by 5 and simplify this to a 1 and that to a 2. Then lo and behold, look at this. I have a 2 and an 8. 2 also can go into 8. So I'm going to divide both the top and the bottom there by 2. This is going to become a 1. That's going to become a 4. So now I have a 4, a 2, a 1, and a 1. Well, y'all remember from our multiplication problems that as long as it's a top and a bottom, if you can simplify ahead of time, do that. And we have a 4 on top and a 2 on bottom. So let's go ahead and divide both of those by 2 to get everything as simple as we can. And that's going to leave us with a 2, a 1, and another 1. From there, we're going to multiply our tops, multiply our bottoms, and our final answer is 2. That's how you do division of fractions. I will do another video on how we divide fractions with mixed numbers and whole numbers next.